The anime begins with a group of people standing in front of the Demon Lord's castle. The boy asks if everyone is ready. The party's mage replies that they are, saying she has finished studying all of the Demon Lord's abilities. She then tells Yuuga that he can definitely win. The boy urges them to invade as soon as possible so he can defeat the Demon Lord. As the gate opens, the group heads toward the castle. Up ahead, one of the Demon Lord's subordinates appears. He laughs and says that before they can face his master, they will have to get past him. When the hero tries to use his skill, he realizes that his attack is stopped with extreme ease. As he charges at the demon, the enemy dodges and counterattacks, making the hero angry enough to use his Excalibur. However, the demon effortlessly repels the strike and knocks all of them down. The hero's party ends up losing consciousness. At that moment, the boy notices a beautiful girl and falls in love, realizing that she is exactly his type. Suddenly, the demon's group appears, asking whether they should finish off all the heroes lying on the ground. The boy panics and tells them to stay inside. They notice that the boy has been staring at the fallen girl the whole time and think he is a pervert. However, the boy says that he was just thinking about what to do. They ask if they should kill them. The boy says no and explains that he needs to take them to a nearby human village. His companions say he is going to get a serious scolding, but he does not care, feeling only sad that he had to let his maiden go. 1 month later, the protagonist, Youki, is questioned by the Demon Lord about the fact that since then, the hero's party has not given up and continues to challenge him, only to lose again. The Demon Lord asks how many times this has happened, and Youki replies that it has been 13 times. One of the Demon Lord's right-hand men laughs, saying that if they lose to someone like Youki, then they really are weak. The Demon Lord asks why Youki does not simply kill the heroes. Youki replies that a bunch of insects like them are not worth killing. Even so, the Demon Lord thinks it would be better to deal with them properly. Youki realizes that they do not understand the importance of that hero party and decides that he himself will put an end to them. As he leaves the room, he knows that if he lets the heroes escape again, the lives of his friends will be in danger. Youki knows that his power is so great that it almost feels like cheating. Those heroes have the potential to defeat the Demon Lord, and if that happens, the world will no longer be ruled by him. For that reason, Youki decides to settle everything the next time. The following day, the heroes' party appears once again. Youki easily blocks their attacks and defeats everyone, leaving only the girls standing. When another attack is launched, Youki calmly blocks it. The boy gets back up and decides to use his Excalibur, but once again, the attack is stopped. He declares that he must defeat the Demon Lord. Youki proposes that one of the girls stay behind, and in exchange, he will let the other 3 pass. One of the girls believes this is the best choice, since they cannot defeat him. The hero, however, refuses. The girl points out that if Youki truly wanted to, he could have killed them many times already, but he did not. Even so, the hero does not trust him, believing that this time could be different. She says that it is better to save the world than to preserve the life of a single priestess. Suddenly, she shouts for everyone to move forward. The boy promises that after they defeat the Demon Lord, they will return immediately. She knows she cannot even scratch Youki, but still chooses to fight. When she uses her attack, it has no effect at all. Youki asks her to wait a moment and explains that he fell in love with her the first time he saw her. He then asks her to go out with him. The girl becomes embarrassed and rejects him. Youki is deeply saddened and decides to end his own life. Feeling that nothing else has meaning anymore, the girl tells him to stop joking, but Youki insists that he is serious. Even if he continues living, he will only be able to remain in that place forever, leaving only to attack human cities and villages, something he does not want to do. The girl replies that this is a lie, because all demons are cruel, and the Demon Lord himself tries to destroy humanity. Youki explains that despite his demonic appearance, he reincarnated from another world and is human on the inside. The girl does not understand why he still obeys the Demon Lord, since with the power he has, he could easily defeat him. Youki says that if he did defeat the Demon Lord, he would end up becoming the next Demon Lord, which he does not want. As a result, he lives in seclusion every day. He thought it might be better to end everything until she appeared. It was love at first sight. During that month, short as it was the first time he had felt alive since becoming a demon. Now, he believes none of it matters anymore. The girl responds that it does matter. He has great power, and if he still has a human heart, he should use it to help people. It is not too late yet, and she asks him to go with her to the outside world. The scene shifts to the human world, which is celebrating the defeat of the demon lord. As everyone rejoices, Youki tears off his own horn so that he can enter the city where his beloved is. He is thanked by everyone. But Yuuga knows that all of this was only possible thanks to Cecilia, who managed to convince Youki to let them pass. Even so, the girl beside Yuuga feels jealous. Upon entering the city, Youki decides to register at the Adventurers Guild. The receptionist says he does not remember the procedure very well and registers Youki as rank F, with rank S being the highest. By completing requests and building a track record, he will be able to rank up. Normally, it takes about a month to go from rank F to rank E. The man tells Youki not to lose the document, as it is a lot of trouble to replace it. He introduces himself as Clayman and wishes Youki good luck. On the very first day, Youki already manages to rank up in order to earn more money. His goal is to live a normal life and, once he achieves that, to confess his feelings once again to his great love. He knows he will do everything he can to become a great success. The next day, rumors spread through the guild about someone who is ranking up at an incredible pace. When Youki goes to take on new quests, the receptionist becomes irritated, since he does not want to work, and asks who Youki is. Youki replies that he is just an ordinary adventurer, but this only annoys the man even more, as he says that no one goes from rank F to rank D in a single week. Youki admits that he may have overdone it a little, but believes it should be fine. After an investigation, no signs of fraud are found. Suddenly, Cecilia appears and asks the man to cancel Youki's request, calling him to come to her house instead. When they arrive at the mansion, the guards become upset that she brought a man with her and question why he is riding in the same carriage as Cecilia. She scolds them, saying that Youki is just a friend. The guards begin to cry and apologize. Youki feels sad at being called just a friend. Inside the house, Cecilia apologizes for visiting him so late, explaining that she had obligations that delayed her. Youki tells her not to worry, saying that he was simply enjoying his life as an adventurer. Still, he is happy that she came to see him. She explains that she heard rumors about how quickly he has been ranking up. A novice adventurer being promoted to rank D in the blink of an eye. For her, it was very helpful to be able to locate him so easily. Then, she asks him to leave the Adventurers Guild, acknowledging that it is quite an unfair request. Youki asks for the reason. Cecilia explains that although the Demon Lord has been defeated, not all threats have disappeared. This time, however, a struggle for supremacy among the human nations may begin, and signs of it are already appearing. The hero of her nation has been receiving an avalanche of marriage proposals from all over the world, using status, wealth, and political marriages. Each country is gathering strength and talent to use as pawns in future wars. She continues, saying that Youki is rising through the adventurer ranks at an unbelievable speed. With the power he possesses, he could certainly reach rank S, something only a few achieve in the country. However, if that happens, he would attract the attention of other nations. If he were recruited and accidentally revealed his demonic powers, that country could use him as a tool to dominate the world. Worse still, they might see him as a threat and end his life in that world. For that reason, she asks Youki to lie low for the time being. He points out that he still needs to pay his bills and that it is not easy to simply disappear. Cecilia tells him not to worry, saying that she would like to hire him and even pay him a salary. She admits, however, that she does not have enough money to hire someone of rank S. Even so, she promises to do everything within her power to help him and asks that he accept her offer in the name of world peace. Youki only asks that she not bow her head to him like that. He states that he would never accept a proposal from another country. No matter how young or beautiful the lady proposing marriage might be, it is out of the question. For him, among all women, he can only see Cecilia. Hearing this, she begins to laugh and apologizes, realizing that her concern was unnecessary. She concludes that there is no problem with him continuing as an adventurer. Youki decides that he will try to be as discreet as possible. At that moment, another woman appears in the house. It is Celia Aquarian, Cecilia's mother. She apologizes for the guard's behavior earlier. Celia explains that lately her daughter has been receiving many marriage proposals, including one from the hero himself. Youki becomes quite irritated upon hearing this, since the hero already has all the girls fawning over him. However, Celia explains that Cecilia rejected all of the proposals. She then approaches and asks whether Youki wants to marry Cecilia. He apologizes and replies that he already confessed once and was rejected. Now, he is working hard as an adventurer, and when he can live a decent life, he plans to confess again. The mother approves of the boy, saying that she would never give her daughter to the wrong person and that she only wants what is best for Cecilia. Before leaving the room, she asks Youki to get along well with her daughter. As he leaves the house, Cecilia realizes that her mother liked him very much. And so ends the first episode. The scene changes to our protagonist, who appears dodging several attacks delivered by evolved chickens. However, there comes a moment when he loses his patience. Tired of only evading, he decides to attack at once and launches his strike, defeating the monster with absurd ease, as if it were no big deal. After some time, he completes the mission without any difficulty at all, and is already on his way home. He recalls that the guild receptionist had said that this mission would take about a week, but he managed to finish it in just one day. When he least expects it, he is attacked again. Even so, he calmly dodges 2 strikes and asks them to stop. After all, they are his friends. He asks Shike to wait a moment, leaving the boy surprised to finally reunite with his captain. Shike thought that he was just an ordinary adventurer who had appeared to hunt demons. Shortly after, he realizes that Happiness and Duke are also fine, which surprises him even more. Duke asks where the boy had been during all this time, since after the defeat of the Demon Lord, he had simply disappeared suddenly. Everyone was worried, imagining that something serious might have happened. In addition, he now looks human, so Duke questions where his horns and wings are. The boy asks for some time to answer everything calmly. Shike intervenes, asking the captain to understand that Duke had truly been worried about him throughout this entire period. Duke insists that he explain right away what happened. Then, Youki decides to tell the truth. He explains that he confessed his feelings to the priestess of the hero's party, but ended up being rejected. After that, he decided to become an adventurer and start living as a human. He says that his friends, if they wish, are also free to do the same and choose their own path. However, none of them want to live independently, so they decide to continue by Youki's side. Everyone shows curiosity and wants to meet the person he fell in love with. Youki says that this will not be possible, since he is hiding his true identity. Duke comments that, in that case, everyone could do the same. Realizing that there is not much to discuss, Youki agrees, but asks that everyone be prepared. The scene changes to the group going after Youki's beloved. She is quite irritated with him, complaining that he plucked all the feathers from her body and asking if he does not feel sorry for anyone. Youki apologizes and promises that he will never do something like that again. She says that she truly hopes he is sorry, while the boy's friends joke around, asking her to tear off his skin. As they sit down, the girl realizes that they are Youki's former companions, but finds it strange that they do not look like demons. The boy explains that he is a Dullahan, Happiness is a harpy, and Shike is a fish man. He would even like to remove his head to prove it, but it is stuck to his helmet and armor. Youki comments that Duke has always been quieter, and never really had much aptitude for being a Dullahan. Duke then explains that, in the past, he did not like Youki very much. The girl asks the reason for that. Duke replies that Youki had a reputation for being extremely closed off. Even when his superior, Zekir, gave orders to attack humans, he would always come up with excuses to avoid doing so. Over time, Zekir got tired of dealing with him. After that, Youki ended up being sent to solitary confinement and left there. To Duke, that was something unacceptable, so he tried to correct the boy, but ended up being defeated with extreme ease. From that moment on, he began to respect and like his captain. The girl realizes how much they care about Youki, and Duke confirms that it is true. Shike and Happiness also admire him greatly. When they ask where the two of them went, they conclude that they probably headed to the mansion. Youki decides to go after them, since it could be dangerous if people discovered that they look human. Suddenly, they find Shike sleeping on the girl's mother's lap. She asks if the boy is Youki's friend, and he confirms it. Youki asks if Shike caused any trouble, but the mother replies that he did not, because she likes children very much. He was running around the garden, she talked with him for a while, and then he ended up falling asleep from exhaustion. The girl asks if there was not another girl with him, and the mother replies that there was, but that Sophia took her away. The scene changes to Happiness, who ended up becoming a maid. Suddenly, Youki appears and asks what she is doing there. Upon discovering that she is Youki's friend, the woman apologizes for having put her to work as a maid. Sophie explains that there was a new maid scheduled for an interview that day. Youki asks Happiness to change clothes, but she refuses, saying that she wants to continue being a maid. Before leaving, they decide to say goodbye. But at that moment, the girl's mother approaches. She explains that her daughter, in addition to being a priestess and a member of the hero's party, also has connections with important people. The next day, she will have the girl take a day off and would like Youki to spend the day with her. The next day, the girl appears with a completely different look, leaving Youki enchanted. She explains that she dressed like that to disguise herself. Youki comments that it must not be easy to be part of the hero's party. She apologizes for having involved him in this, but he says that he does not mind and that he would like to enjoy the day by her side. The two spend the day visiting several shops, buying things, and eating together until they enter an accessory shop, where the girl is enchanted by some items. Suddenly, other heroes appear and ask what she is doing there at that hour. She replies that she is taking a walk. They say that they are too and ask if she wants to join them. Cecilia apologizes and says that she is already accompanied today. As they approach, one of the heroes thinks that he recognizes Youki from somewhere. Youki says that it must be a mistake. Even so, the hero invites him to come along, since they were going to the same place. The girl gets irritated because that was a date with Youki after a long time. She asks if the two of them were on a date, and Youki believes that they were. The girl then wishes that the two of them work out, so that the hero would finally give up on the priestess for good. She enters the shop, and Youki remembers that she had rejected the hero's marriage proposal, believing that he might still have feelings for her. Youki decides to buy a present for Cecilia as a thank you for the day they spent together. But the hero hears everything, steps in between them, and decides to choose gifts for both of them. Youki chooses a simple item, while the hero picks the most expensive one in the shop. In the middle of this, Cecilia's glasses fall to the ground, revealing her identity. People recognize the heroes and run toward them asking for autographs. Youki ends up being pushed to the ground in the middle of the confusion. He gets up and runs after Cecilia, but along the way he encounters someone who seems familiar to him. The man introduces himself as Raven, a former swordsman of the hero's party and the current commander of the knights. After some time, Youki remembers who he is. He decides to help him, saying that the heroes went to the other side and that the girls would soon follow. Youki grabs Raven, and the two of them start running to avoid him being recognized again, realizing that Raven does not intend to thank him. Youki simply tells him to be more careful in the future. Even so, the boy asks him to wait a little longer, and it is at that moment that Youki notices that Raven has a very high-pitched voice. Raven asks, somewhat apprehensively, if Youki is not going to mock him for it. Youki calmly replies that he would not do such a thing. The boy is surprised, as he realizes that Youki is someone very different. Anyone else would probably have laughed at his voice, but Youki showed no such reaction. Youki responds by saying that he simply does not act that way and prepares to leave. However, Raven asks him to wait just a moment longer. He asks if the two of them could become friends. The boy becomes embarrassed, since almost everyone usually laughs at him because of his voice, and Youki was one of the few people who did not do that. Soon after, Youki accepts the proposal, and the two formally introduce themselves to each other. Even so, Youki realizes that he needs to continue on his way and says goodbye, asking Raven to be careful. As he walks away, Youki begins to wonder where Cecilia went. The girl, in turn, is also looking for him, but ends up finding an injured child calling for his mother. Cecilia approaches, heals the boy's wound, and decides to help him find his mother. Shortly after, Youki appears and manages to make the little boy laugh, which calms him down. Together, they begin searching for the child's mother. Along the way, Youki comments that it might be better for them to leave soon, since they could end up encountering more people who might recognize Cecilia. The scene then shifts to the hero, who is also looking for her. He comments that he intends to find her, but the girl asks him to go back home, as she believes Cecilia has already done the same. When he finally finds her, the hero turns around to call his companion, but ends up no longer finding her there. The next day, Youki receives the news that Cecilia became extremely tired after the outing they had together. He apologizes, believing that he was responsible for her catching a cold. However, the girl's mother explains that it was not his fault, but the hero's. After involving Cecilia in all that confusion, no one knows how he found out, but he appeared saying that he wanted to take care of her. Luckily, Sophia managed to stop the young man and sent him back home. The mother then asks if Youki would like to see how her daughter is doing. Upon entering the room, Cecilia becomes very embarrassed to be seen in that state. Youki apologizes once again, saying that all of this was his fault. Cecilia replies that, since he feels responsible, on her next day off, he will have to accompany her wherever she wants to go. After hearing this, Youki becomes extremely embarrassed and starts to think that it sounds like an invitation to a date. Youki says that this time he ended up failing, but that next time he will not make a mistake, and asks her to recover as soon as possible. At that moment, Sophia enters the room and asks him not to speak so loudly. Then she says that it is already time for Youki to leave, since he has spent quite a lot of time with Cecilia. As he leaves, Youki ends up running into Raven again. The boy asks what Youki is doing there, and he explains that he was called by Cecilia. Raven then asks for help, confessing that he is in love with a girl and intends to confess his feelings, but feels very embarrassed because of his voice. Youki tells him not to worry, saying that Raven is a charismatic person and will certainly be able to express himself well. Upon realizing that Raven is at Cecilia's house, Youki begins to wonder if she is the girl Raven is in love with. And so, the second episode comes to an end. If you enjoyed it, do not forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel to follow more content like this. There are also 2 other videos appearing on the screen that you might enjoy. We will see you next week with the next episode of this anime. When he realizes that the person in question might be Cecilia, the boy is constantly thrown into shock, overwhelmed by the fear that he may be encouraging a potential rival in love. He knows that Cecilia would not accept something like that easily. But since the other boy is part of the hero's group, there is a possibility that something happened between them during some mission. Perhaps they grew closer, perhaps feelings emerged. Even without any proof, this idea refuses to leave his mind. He understands that, if this truly happened, he would end up losing the great love of his life, without even noticing it. The boy ends up returning home dejected, and without any energy. Even with Youki trying to cheer him up and encourage him, he cannot find the courage to confess to the person he likes. Shortly afterward, Youki decides to go check on how Cecilia is doing. He talks with the girl's maid and mentions that he missed her, despite having just left the boy's house. The maid probably thought that Youki was someone desperate. The woman simply asks him to come back another day, explaining that Cecilia is resting. Youki then asks whether Raven showed up there, and the maid replies that he did, saying that he went after Hapines. At that moment, Youki realizes that Raven is in love with the girl. Soon after, he decides to go see how his friend is doing. Hapines asks why he came there, and Youki explains that Raven showed up earlier to see her. He says that Raven is his friend and asks whether he had confessed. Hapines responds directly that it is impossible for the two of them to be together. The answer surprises Youki. He understands that, if she does not like him, there is not much that can be done. However, the girl explains that it is not exactly that. Youki tries to ask where the two of them met, but Hapines turns her back and walks away to continue her work. He decides that it is better to come back another time. Later, Youki returns home and decides to talk with his friends about Hapines and Raven. They ask who Raven is, and Youki explains that he is part of the hero's group. Soon after, they remember that they only ever lost to that group when facing them. One of his friends questions why Youki introduced a human to Happines, but he replies that he did not introduce anyone. Youki knows that even if some human were to confess to Happines, she would not be able to accept it, since she does not understand her own feelings very well. Harpies are extremely beautiful creatures, and because of that, they are constantly hunted and captured to become slaves. Humans never stop pursuing them because of their magnificent feathers. Happines ended up joining the Demon Lord's army precisely because of this persecution. Youki remembers that this is true. Even so, one of the boys comments that he does not think Happines hates humans. She herself became a maid because she likes the mansion, a place where many humans live together. Youki understands the point and believes that Duke may be worried, but asks him not to fret so much. He thinks Raven is a good person, and that Happines should realize that on her own. The next day, the scene shifts to Youki going to the guild. Upon entering, he notices that Clayman is not there. A woman approaches and asks whether he is not the boy who always talks with the guild's vice master. Youki asks where he is. The woman says, in a low voice, that she cannot comment on it openly because of the guild's reputation, but explains that he was hospitalized. The scene changes to Youki going to visit him. Upon entering the room, he asks what happened. The man explains that he ended up making his wife extremely angry. It was their wedding anniversary, and he spent the entire day trying to choose a present. Unable to decide what to buy, he hesitated so much that he bought nothing, ended up being kicked out of the shop, and still arrived late for dinner. His wife thought that he had completely forgotten the date, and that is how everything ended up like that. Youki is certain that he is a good person. The man tells him that his wife is a former rank A adventurer, just like he also was in the past. The two of them formed a famous duo, known as the Invincible and Apathetic Couple. After accepting a high-level mission together, Youki decides to use his healing magic to help him, but the man refuses, saying that this is a great chance for his wife to take good care of him. He asks Youki not to interfere with this special moment. Suddenly, Sophia appears at the place and quickly realizes that the two are married. When she is called sweetie, she responds with a kick to her husband's head. Soon after, the two go outside. Youki asks whether Cecilia is feeling better, and Sophia replies that the fever has gone down and that she is away from work. Youki then asks whether women really like presents. Sophia becomes irritated and asks whether her husband said something, but Youki explains that he just wants to thank Cecilia. Sophia says that if it is something given from the heart, Cecilia will certainly be happy. After leaving the hospital, Youki begins to imagine what it would be like if he and Cecilia got married. Soon after, he realizes that he is thinking too much, comparing everything to his former world. He then decides to visit Raven to see how he is doing. Upon entering the knight's dormitory, he notices that Raven is physically fine and asks if everything is all right. Calling him by name, he gets no response, but when he mentions Happines, Raven reacts immediately, asking how he knows that name. Youki explains that he has known Happines for a long time and that he is worried about Raven. He asks how the two of them met. Raven tells him that, on that day, he was patrolling alone when he found Happines being chased by a group of men. He defeated one of them with ease, and the others realized that he was Raven from the heroes group and fled immediately. After saving her, Happines thanked him, and Raven said that it was only his duty. Upon hearing his voice, she commented that it was beautiful, and it was at that moment that he fell in love with her. Soon after, the girl ran away. Youki remembers that Happines went to Cecilia's house that day. Raven asks how he knows that, and Youki explains that he left his homeland to live close to the person he loves, striving as an adventurer to become worthy of that person. Raven says that Youki is amazing, but compares himself negatively, calling himself pathetic. Youki disagrees, saying that Happines has difficulty dealing with men because of past traumas and asks Raven not to pressure her. Youki believes that it is still too early to give up and invites Raven to go out together. When they enter a shop to buy something for Cecilia, Raven spends the entire time looking for something for Happines. He finds a pink flower, and Youki thinks it is perfect for her. Suddenly, a girl from the heroes group appears. She notices that Youki is buying something for Cecilia and that Raven has also chosen a present. Youki realizes that the two of them barely talk to each other. The girl explains that, when she first met Raven, she ended up laughing at him, but then asks that they leave the place quickly. When they arrive at a restaurant, no one talks much while they eat. Then, the girl decides to touch on Youki's weak point, Cecilia. She asks how far the two of them have gone. Youki answers, in a dejected manner, that they have not gone anywhere, since Cecilia receives marriage proposals from people all over the world. The girl reminds him that even the hero was rejected. She knows this because he does not stop bothering Cecilia, entering rooms at the wrong time, messing up bath schedules, and stumbling into embarrassing situations. In addition, Yuuga is so popular that he ends up causing problems during the group's travels. Raven asks if she wants any love advice. She answers that it is not that. But Raven states that Youki is someone who can be trusted. Then, she finally decides to speak. The girl explains that Yuuga started to hate her because of an event from the past. She asks Youki not to tell anyone about this, and he assures her that he will keep it a secret. The girl begins to recount that, during a certain mission, the heroes group was defeated many times inside the Demon Lord's castle. The enemy was not the Lord himself, but rather the demon responsible for protecting the center of the castle, someone absurdly powerful. Every time they faced this opponent, they were completely crushed. Every time they were defeated, they ended up being taken to the nearest village. There, even the most serious injuries were treated with care. For the group, that was extremely humiliating. Even so, Yuuga always lied. They said that they had retreated for safety after approaching the center of the Demon Lord's castle. Since the heroes group carried the hope of the people, everything had to be done to protect Yuuga's image and honor. The defeats kept repeating, and the resources provided by the guild began to run out. After that point, there was no longer any way to turn back. That was when the demon made a cruel proposal to allow them to advance as long as they left Cecilia behind. It was the girl herself who convinced the group to accept, insisting that they abandon her while they went on to defeat the Demon Lord. Because she made such a harsh decision, Yuuga was never able to forgive her. She explains that he never said this openly and always acted as if everything was fine, maintaining a cheerful attitude. However, she could perceive the resentment hidden within him. The girl believes that even Youki might hate her because of this. Raven intervenes, asking her not to hate Makana, saying that he also carries guilt for not having expressed his opinion at that moment. Soon after, he apologizes. In silence, Youki also feels responsible for everything that happened. Youki asks if she has already told Cecilia how she truly feels. The girl replies that she cannot, because she feels too ashamed to say something like that. For her, everything became far too complicated after leaving Cecilia behind. She believes that she will never receive forgiveness. Youki asks if she intends to let this strange atmosphere continue forever and asks her to think more carefully about it. After that, the girl says goodbye and leaves. Raven, dissatisfied with the way everything ended, decides to go after Hapines. When he arrives at the mansion, Duke appears before him and says that he will not hand his friend over to a coward. Raven replies that he only wants to talk. Duke allows it, but makes it clear that he will not accept Raven making her cry. After that, Duke explains to Youki that everything was nothing more than a test to evaluate the boy. Raven approaches Hapines, hands her the present he bought, and asks that the two of them become friends. Embarrassed, the girl accepts the request for friendship, and thus another episode comes to an end. I hope everyone enjoyed it. If you liked it, leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and we will see each other next week. Bye. At a new moment of that day, Youki remains lying in his bed, without any desire to get up or do anything productive, murmuring in an almost inaudible manner. His only wish is to be able to meet Cecilia, the girl he is in love with. Shik tries to wake him up, insisting that they go to Cecilia's mansion, but upon remembering that she is not there at the moment, Youki abandons the idea, which makes Shik puff out his cheeks in disappointment. The truth is that Youki has already gone an entire week without seeing her, something that ends up being commented on among the members of the hero group. Everyone is extremely busy. Cecilia travels between cities and villages taking care of the wounded. Raven acts as the captain of the knights. Ji fulfills his role as a mage of the royal court. and Yuga is involved in diplomatic tasks and in the extermination of high-level monsters. Faced with this situation, Youki understands that a group so scattered will hardly have many chances to talk. And this bothers him, because he would like to be able to help everyone. Shik, increasingly irritated, insists on going out and, as a form of protest, ends up sitting down forcefully on Youki's stomach. The impact leaves him out of breath. Soon after, Shik comments that this would be even more fun if Duke were there, something impossible at the moment, since he was recruited by the captain of the Knights. At that moment, someone knocks on the door. Youki answers and allows the entrance of a messenger, who greets them politely before delivering a letter. The message is from Cecilia, informing that she will arrive home later that day. Youki becomes radiant upon hearing this, barely able to contain his excitement, since he will finally be able to give her the necklace he prepared. Sometime later, he goes out to walk through the streets, thinking about how he could occupy his time until nightfall arrives. Shik had already gone ahead, excited, toward the mansion. Shortly after, an elderly woman calls out to him from a few meters away, holding a crystal ball, which immediately makes Youki realize that his luck that day will not be the best. Even so, he states with conviction that he will not fall for any made-up story and continues on his way, focusing only on the idea of finally seeing his beloved again and believing that it would be the best day of all. His first destination is the bakery he usually frequents. There, he is greeted by a strong man wearing an apron, which surprises him. Youki asks where the girl who always serves him is, and the man explains that her younger sister is busy that day, so he himself will be responsible for the service. Youki simply nods, points out what he wants to buy, and watches the man place the items into a bag and hand them over in a straightforward manner. As he leaves, Youki wishes that the girl returns to work soon and, when checking the sweets he bought, realizes that he ended up crushing them all unintentionally. Even so, he tries to convince himself that they must still be tasty. While eating distractedly, Youki bumps into a huge man with an intimidating aura. He apologizes quickly and moves on, letting out a sigh of relief. However, he stops again when he notices something unpleasant right in front of him. Resuming his walk, he begins to feel dejected, increasingly believing that this truly was not a good day. Suddenly, a child appears running without paying attention, focused on a kebab skewer, and ends up colliding with him. The food falls to the ground, and the child starts to cry. Youki takes the child to the nearest stall and buys 2 skewers to console them, making sure that they leave smiling. This act of kindness makes him relax a little. Soon after, however, a woman runs past and steals his bag of coins, fleeing as fast as she can. Youki gives chase and uses his abilities to increase his own speed, managing to catch up to her and knock her down with a kick. At that moment, Yuga appears, picks up the money, and states that there is no reason to return the wallet. Youki tries to explain that the money is his, but Yuga does not let him finish, accusing him of lying and threatening to attack him if he insists. Yuga even draws his sword, forcing Youki to dodge. In the midst of the confusion, the wallet ends up being opened and taken away, while Youki continues to be attacked until he is restrained by the knights. Yuga orders him to stop resisting and confess, stating that it is clear that he is guilty. Youki's luck only gets worse, and he ends up being thrown into a cell. Inside, someone comments on whether he missed life behind bars. When he raises his gaze, Youki recognizes Duke. Duke asks what he got up to this time, questioning whether he is committing crimes just to get Cecilia's attention. Youki realizes that Duke already understands the situation and listens as he explains that Raven is already investigating the case and that all he needs is patience. Shortly after, Irene from the cavalry appears to call Duke back to training, since the second in command is furious about his absence. Youki observes Irene carefully and wonders if she is an elf, because of the shape of her ears. Duke tells him to ignore that and asks whether she brought the key. He explains that the captain has already cleared everything up, confirming that Youki did nothing wrong and that the true culprit was a wanted thief. Irene agrees, hands over the key, and informs them that the hero wishes to apologize. Later, Youki visits a restaurant to which he was invited by Yuga, with Raven also present. Yuga apologizes for the problems caused and, as a form of compensation, offers a true banquet, allowing Youki to eat as much as he wants. Faced with the abundant table, Youki is impressed by the effort to be forgiven. After the meal, Yuga comments that he discovered that Youki is friends with Raven and spreads several papers across the table, showing the proof of the huge scolding he received for having imprisoned him. Raven remains silent, but his aura makes it clear that he is still irritated. Changing the subject, Yuga asks if Youki is the boy who was with Cecilia the other day and, upon hearing the confirmation, questions what the relationship between them is. Youki replies that they are just friends, at least for now. Yuga asks for advice on how to get along better with Cecilia, leaving Youki speechless. Inside, he feels a bit uncomfortable, remembering an important detail. Yuga is, in fact, his rival in love. Even so, he merely apologizes, stating that he knows her well. For a brief moment, Youki thinks about it and suggests that Yuga look for someone who is closer to Cecilia. At that instant, Rensa appears and makes it very clear, through her gestures and notes, that they cannot count on her for that. This attitude makes Yuga comment that perhaps she should stop worrying so much about her own voice. Youki does not like that way of speaking at all, and even thinks that it sounds insensitive for someone who carries the title of hero. Ignoring the strange atmosphere, Raven shifts the focus of the conversation and asks Yuga about Mikana, mentioning the reason why she no longer appears with her grayish hair. Yuga replies that it cannot be her, because he believes that Mikana hates Cecilia. Youki's expression changes immediately, and he cannot let that go. He asks whether Mikana has ever said something like that directly. Yuga explains that it may seem hard to believe, but Mikana supposedly tried to abandon Cecilia in one of the battles. Fortunately, that did not end up happening, and Cecilia did not suffer anything. But even so, Yuga considers that attitude extremely cruel. The way he describes what happened bothers Youki. With a serious expression, he asks whether Yuga is speaking with certainty and clarifies that it was not Mikana who abandoned Cecilia. Yuga becomes irritated and states that he was not involved in that. Youki partially agrees, but makes it clear that he heard the entire story directly from Cecilia. According to her, the decision did not come from Mikana, but rather from a proposal made by a powerful demon, against whom they had no real chance of winning. Yuga accepts this explanation, but adds that, even though she opposed it, Mikana insisted that they accept the deal. Even so, he does not understand why Cecilia would have done something like that if she did not hate her. Youki argues back, saying that Yuga keeps insisting on this idea of hatred. Even though Cecilia told everything while crying, she still feels guilty about that decision. Yuga is visibly surprised upon hearing this, but reinforces that it was Mikana who pressured the group to accept it, and that is why he believes the blame lies with her. These words only increase Youki's irritation, and he reminds Yuga of an important detail. When Cecilia asked them to move forward, it was Yuga who made the final decision. He then asks whether Cecilia ever lied about this. Yuga admits that she did not, but insists, almost like a mantra, that it was not him who abandoned Cecilia. Shaken, Yuga lowers his head. Raven places a hand on his shoulder, showing relief at seeing him reflect. But when he looks at him, he merely shakes his head in disapproval at his attitude. At that moment, Youki reminds Yuga that he is the hero, and that he needs to stop blaming his companions, as well as take responsibility for his own choices. Otherwise, it would only be shameful. Upon hearing this, Yuga can no longer hold himself together and begins to cry, first quietly and then more intensely. Youki apologizes to Yuga for being harsh and advises him to accept Mikana's reprimands, reminding him that they come from someone who has always been by his side. Yuga admits that he lost control because of the bond he has had with her since childhood and decides to apologize. Afraid to go alone, he asks Youki to accompany him to Mikana's house. Yuga ends up entering through the window and is caught in an embarrassing situation. Even so, he confesses that he was wrong to blame her and asks her to continue being strict with him. Mikana becomes irritated, interprets everything in the worst possible way, and attacks him with magic, while Youki steps away to avoid getting involved. Continuing on his own, Youki ignores a fortune teller who says that his destiny has changed, meets the muscular baker again, receives sweets as compensation, and is later surrounded by men in suits. A butler apologizes for the young master's behavior and hands something over as reparation. Finally, Youki arrives late at Cecilia's mansion. Despite her initial mild irritation, she welcomes him warmly, commenting that it felt like an eternity since the last time they saw each other. Youki then gives her pastries and skewers as a gift, which she finds curious and amusing. Cecilia prepares tea for Youki, proud of having learned how to cook, which makes Youki fall even more in love with her. The conversation continues peacefully until the unexpected arrival of Yuga, Makana, and Raven, who come to apologize for having abandoned her during the confrontation against the Demon King. Yuga takes the blame. Makana and Raven admit their cowardice, but Cecilia states that she holds no grudge, explaining that everyone did what they could to survive and that no one hesitated to return for the others. Relieved, they reconcile, and the atmosphere becomes light once again. Later, Youki confesses that he encouraged the group to apologize, and Cecilia thanks him, saying that she is happy with her new life. Taking advantage of the moment, Youki gives her a necklace as a present. Cecilia accepts it with joy, deeply moving Youki, who cries with happiness upon feeling that his feelings were returned. The episode ends with an abrupt change of scenery. A city taken over by fires and looters. A mysterious man appears, defeats all the criminals effortlessly, and shows complete indifference to the destruction around him, closing the fourth episode on a tense note. A few days later, Youki and Sikjin travel alongside Cecilia toward a city that has been struck by a disaster. While they are sitting together inside the carriage, Youki feels irritated that Sik has joined them as a third wheel, since he wanted to spend some time alone with Cecilia. Cecilia apologizes to both of them for having dragged them along, but suddenly the carriage shakes as if it had passed over a bump. This makes Cecilia feel like vomiting, leaving Youki worried. She explains that the long journey is making her nauseous, so Sik offers a secret potion created with his Pixis techniques. After drinking it, Cecilia feels better, and Sik starts boasting about his usefulness compared to Youki. Seeing the two bicker with each other, Cecilia feels happy, knowing that she will have lively company during the mission. After some time, they arrive at the village that was destroyed and damaged by a bandit attack. The village chief approaches the group and greets Cecilia, but grows curious about who her companions are. She explains that both Youki and Sik are excellent healers who volunteered to help. The old man trusts them and leads them to the village shelter. There, the three of them work together to heal all the injured people. While they work, Youki watches Cecilia smiling as she sees a villager recover. He feels happy seeing how proud she is of her hard work, a feeling the village chief shares. The protagonist appreciates the old man's good judgment, but changes the subject and begins to talk about the injured, questioning how it is possible that none of the villagers died in the attack. The chief explains that the bandits fled suddenly during the assault. He reveals that a strange man appeared out of nowhere and attacked them, which caused the bandits to escape in terror. Youki becomes worried by this, but notices that Cecilia is exhausted. He approaches her and asks her to rest, but she refuses to sit down. Suddenly, Youki uses a spell to knock her out and force her to rest. While the poor priestess falls asleep, all the villagers ask whether Youki attacked her. He quickly explains that he only put her to sleep before carrying her to bed. After some time, Cecilia wakes up and realizes what happened. She stares at Youki, who immediately realizes that he is in trouble. Youki apologizes for putting her to sleep without her permission, but believes that he had no other option. This makes Cecilia remember that if she kept healing people without energy, she would end up harming her own body. She remains silent for a moment, but asks him not to take such drastic measures without her consent. Youki promises not to do it again, unless it is truly necessary, emphasizing that he has already finished healing everyone else. Upon hearing that, Cecilia smiles and thanks him for the help, making Youki blush more than a tomato. Then, the village chief enters the room to check on Cecilia's condition. After confirming that she is fine, he asks whether she can help a girl named Till, who lives on the outskirts of the village. Youki wonders if Till was also attacked by the bandits, but the chief denies it. Even so, he shows concern, as the girl is always bedridden due to a chronic illness. Cecilia agrees to examine her, and they all head to her house. When they arrive, they find Till quietly reading a book in bed. The young girl is surprised by the sudden visit, so Cecilia explains that they are there only to check on her health. Soon, Till starts coughing because of her illness, and Youki tells Sick that he will take care of her. Sick hands him one of his Pixis medicines, but Till hesitates to take it. Youki reassures her, saying that Sick is quite competent, even if he seems a bit clueless. In the end, Till drinks the potion and, after just one sip, begins to feel better. She thanks them for the help and believes that her mysterious saviors arrived because her deity answered her prayers. Youki wonders whom she is referring to, and Till reveals that there is a statue of the local deity worshipped by the villagers. According to her, when the bandits attacked, Till was offering food to the statue, but ended up falling asleep beside it. This led the villagers to believe that the deity had protected her. Sick comments that the fainting may have simply been a coincidence caused by her illness, but Till remains firm in her belief. She also tells a story from her childhood, when she was surrounded by a pack of wolves and saw the demonic statue shine with a dark power while annihilating the animals. For Till, that was the work of her deity. Both Youki and Cecilia become worried about this strange demonic power. To clarify the situation, Till leads them to the sculpture of the deity. As they approach, they realize that the statue represents a terrifying demon. Till refuses to allow any blasphemy against her beloved deity, but begins coughing again because of her condition. While Cecilia helps her, Youki continues observing the statue. He comments that it is, in fact, a gargoyle from his homeland. At that moment, the demon comes to life, as if to prove his words. Youki quickly steps back to avoid the gargoyle's attack and warns Sick to be careful. Sick, in turn, kicks the gargoyle and knocks it down with a single move. Youki tries to speak with the creature, but it refuses and declares itself ready to die. When Cecilia prepares to fulfill that wish, Youki stops her. The gargoyle relaxes when it realizes that its life is not in danger. Youki points out that it was the one who attacked first, so the gargoyle apologizes, which he accepts. Finally, Youki questions why a demon would be in such a remote village. The gargoyle explains that it was created to protect a sanctuary, but that some bandits looted it and took everything, including the statue itself. On their way back, those same bandits attacked an innocent village, which caused the gargoyle to explode in fury and defeat them all. When the villagers witnessed the strange demon defeating those who attacked them, they immediately offered it shelter among the people and began treating it as their local deity. As time passed, the villagers ended up forgetting that the figure was actually a gargoyle, but Till never stopped visiting the statue to clean it and take care of it. Since the bandits had recently returned to attack the village once again, the gargoyle decided to protect it in return for the attention it had always received. Youki then realizes that the creature has no malicious intent toward the villagers. The gargoyle itself reassures him, stating that it lives in isolation and does not bother anyone in the village. Hearing this, the protagonist apologizes for having attacked it earlier and steps aside to speak privately with Sick. Later that night, Youki returns home accompanied by Cecilia, who laughs when she realizes that Sick went to sleep far too early. In truth, Youki had sent Sick away on purpose, just to be able to spend some time alone with Cecilia. She notices his attentiveness and asks if something is worrying him. Youki quickly hides his true thoughts and says that he was merely reflecting on the gargoyle. Cecilia still shows a certain insecurity about trusting a demon so close to the villagers, but Youki reassures her, stating that the creature is peaceful. With that, Cecilia feels that there is no longer any reason for concern. Silence settles between the two, and Youki notices her face slightly flushed, forgetting all his worries for a moment. Suddenly, Cecilia stumbles over an exposed root, and Youki quickly catches her, holding her in his arms. Both realize how close they are and immediately step back, embarrassed. Youki reminds her to be careful while walking, and soon they continue heading toward the village, where the alarm sounds again due to yet another bandit attack. When the confrontation begins, Youki and the others take the front line. At first, the bandits do not take the young ones seriously, but everything changes when Sick defeats several of them with ease, forcing everyone to see them as real threats. Even Cecilia is surprised by Sick's strength, and Youki proudly comments that he is his servant. Preparing to fight, Youki eliminates another group of bandits. Suddenly, one of them tries to attack Cecilia from behind, but Youki notices in time and calmly neutralizes him. Shortly after, the two notice smoke rising from the place where the gargoyle statue was located. Youki sends Sik to check what is happening, while he remains facing the remaining bandits. Seeing Sik move away, the enemies believe they have the advantage, thinking that Youki would not be able to deal with everyone alone. However, he advances and defeats them all with a powerful tornado spell. With the bandits defeated and Sik still not having returned, Youki decides to go with Cecilia to the gargoyle sculpture to check the situation. Upon arriving, they find Till trying to comfort the injured gargoyle, while an unknown young man holds Sik by the neck. Noticing Youki, the stranger throws Sik away as if he were just an object and begins mocking the protagonist arrogantly. Cecilia recognizes the man as Miller, a mysterious hero from a past era of the Empire. Youki is surprised to discover that there are other heroes besides himself. While Sik tries to get up, Cecilia asks him to rest and questions what happened. He explains that he found Miller trying to attack the gargoyle, and that, when he attempted to protect it, he ended up becoming the target of all the blows. Miller scoffs at the idea of someone defending a gargoyle and advances toward the fallen creature. But Youki stops him. He states that the gargoyle had protected an innocent girl, but Miller refuses to listen and launches an attack against them. Youki responds with magic, yet Miller's sword completely absorbs the spell. Cecilia explains that the weapon devours magic, being the perfect counter to Youki's abilities. Miller smiles cruelly and strikes the gargoyle's arm, ignoring Cecilia's warnings not to provoke a neighboring nation. He claims, without hesitation, that he would love to start a war just to be able to kill enemy soldiers. Realizing how cruel he is, Youki prepares to defeat him, unleashing several magical attacks in succession. Even so, Miller advances without difficulty, blocking everything. When Youki releases a powerful plasma spell, Miller's sword finally begins to crack. Youki realizes that the weapon has reached its limit, and soon after, it shatters completely. With no alternatives left, Miller is defeated with a single blow and falls unconscious. However, even on the ground, Miller launches a surprise projectile toward the gargoyle. Youki is caught off guard and cannot defend against the attack. Till steps in front and ends up being hit in the gargoyle's place. Cecilia rushes to heal her while Miller mocks Youki for having lowered his guard. Youki tries to react, but Miller fires an arrow that spreads into an area attack, injuring the others, and takes advantage of the confusion to flee. Seeing his friends wounded, Youki feels anger toward himself for having trusted too much and allowed the enemies escape. Overwhelmed by fury, he loses control and transforms into his true demonic form. Noticing Cecilia's concern, Youki flies toward the forest, where he finds Miller staggering. Before he can react, Youki appears from behind and knocks him down, declaring that his crimes have come to an end. He hurls Miller against several trees, displaying overwhelming strength. Even shocked, Miller has no time to react when Youki appears again and strikes him with a brutal blow. Feeling the grip tightening around his neck, Miller provokes Youki, saying that both of them share the same desire to kill. Those words make Youki remember Cecilia's face, realizing that he does not want to become someone like Miller. Regaining his sanity, he throws him into a lake, considering him unworthy of any further attention. After that, Youki returns to his human form and finds Cecilia waiting for him. She notices a wound on his head and heals him immediately. Seeing him safe and sound, Cecilia begins to cry in relief. The next day, the group discusses how to heal the gargoyle's limbs. Sik suggests taking her to Minerva, but Cecilia reminds him that demons are not allowed there. Youki then reveals that he turned the gargoyle into a statue of earth to transport her in secret for safety. Later, they return to Cecilia's house, where Till begins her life as a maid. Cecilia, however, refuses to keep the strange gargoyle statue inside the house, which leaves Till deeply moved. Thus ends the 5th episode. The scene shifts to Youki, who decides to speak directly with the king of the people. Standing before the throne, he maintains a firm posture, but inside he is fully aware of the situation he is in. Youki begins by explaining that his and his companions' visit to the castle is directly connected to the incident that occurred in the village of Dagaz. In his thoughts, he knows very well that the kings of that world, whether human or demon, tend to be equally proud, authoritarian, and difficult to deal with. Even so, he prefers to speak in a simple, honest, and direct manner, without unnecessary detours. He reports that both of them managed to defeat the hero Miller, along with the bandits who accompanied him, and that, thanks to this, they were able to save the village of Dagaz from certain destruction. His words are clear and objective, making it evident that there were no exaggerations or attempts to glorify their own deeds. Faced with this account, the king states that the two will receive official compensation as recognition for the deeds accomplished. He then asks if there is any specific reward they wish to receive, making it clear that the kingdom is willing to properly pay for the help provided. Both respond that they do not desire anything in particular. However, after a brief silence, Youki comments that he would like a different kind of reward, something that the king, at least in theory, could grant. When questioned about what this unusual request would be, Youki answers without hesitation. He desires Cecilia's love. The declaration falls as a surprise in the hall. The king, for a few moments, seems to process what he has just heard, and then soon begins to laugh loudly, stating that not even he, with all the power he possesses, would be capable of granting something like that. The scene then shifts to Cecilia, who scolds Youki with evident irritation. To her, confessing feelings in a place like that, in front of such an important figure, is something completely inappropriate. She says that this can only be the result of a total lack of common sense. The girl's mother intervenes immediately afterward, stating that all of this is exclusively Youki's fault and that he should seriously reflect on what he has just done. As punishment, she decides that, from that day on, Youki will be forbidden from seeing Cecilia for an entire month. The decision causes surprise even in Cecilia, who considers the punishment far too harsh, since 1 month seems like too much time for something like that. The mother, noticing her daughter's reaction, asks if not even Cecilia would be able to wait that long, then suggesting that perhaps half a month would be more reasonable. Soon after, she asks Hapines to take Youki outside. While being dragged away, Youki is instructed to look ahead. It is at that moment that he notices Seek, visibly dejected, keeping his gaze constantly directed downward. Youki remembers that he has not returned home since the incident and asks if the reason is Miller. In his mind, he imagines that Seek must be suffering for not having been able to protect Till and the gargoyle. Even so, he does not have time to insist, as he ends up being taken outside and led to his own room. Lying on the bed, Youki finally has time to reflect. He acknowledges that he made a big mistake by confessing in front of the king, letting himself be carried away by impulse. The gargoyle, noticing his state, asks if something happened. Youki explains that he ended up getting too carried away and, because of that, was forbidden from visiting Cecilia's house for a while. The gargoyle suggests that he use this period to do everything he can in order to repair the damage caused, since he will have plenty of time available to think and act. The scene shifts to Youki at the Adventurers Guild. Determined, he asks for the most difficult job available, resolved to prove to everyone and to himself that he is worthy of Cecilia. He accepts heavy, dangerous, and exhausting missions, putting his own body to the test on a daily basis. After that, the scene returns to Cecilia, who talks with her mother and comments that almost a month has already passed since the incident. She wonders what Youki has been doing during all that time. The maid replies that she heard from her husband that Youki has been working intensely, almost without rest. The scene then cuts to Youki arriving home. The gargoyle asks why he seems so excited, and Youki responds that almost a month has already passed and that he is happy with the idea of finally meeting his friend again. However, the gargoyle asks him to stop and listen. Then, he transforms again and reveals that the damage to his body is more serious than they had imagined, although it should last only a few days. Youki asks why he did not say anything earlier, but the gargoyle responds that it would not have solved anything. Instead, he makes a request that Youki take care of the girl who always cleans him. He explains that Till's illness has not yet been cured and that she may faint at any moment. Youki remembers that Seek had said her situation was stable, but the gargoyle states that, by observing her since she was little, he realizes that something has been wrong lately. If she collapses now, she will end up completely alone. Faced with this, Youki decides to keep the girl company. Even so, he makes it clear that he also intends to save the gargoyle. Even when they try to explain that there may no longer be time, Youki insists that nothing is impossible for him. Without the gargoyle, that room would be empty, like a work of art with no one to contemplate it. The scene shifts to Youki talking with a friend about the cracks in the gargoyle's body. The friend explains that it is enough to provide a bit of magical ore to solve the problem. When Duke begins to explain the rest, Youki runs off, already thinking about how to obtain that ore as soon as possible. At that moment, Cecilia appears running toward him, visibly distressed. She says that the situation is very serious. Youki immediately asks about the girl's state of health, and Seek explains that she is not doing well at all. Magic cannot fight the illness. Physical exhaustion is extreme, and current medicine serves only as a temporary solution. Youki asks if there is anything that can be done. Seek replies that rare medicinal herbs are required, especially the twilight primrose. When asked where to find this herb, Cecilia explains that it only blooms in regions with a high concentration of magical power. Determined, she decides to accompany Youki so that they can find it more quickly. In addition, Youki asks where he could obtain magical ores, and Cecilia mentions that it might be possible to find them at the trade guild. As they leave the room, they run into Cecilia's mother. When they try to explain themselves, she immediately realizes that both are worried about Till and allows them to proceed. Upon arriving at the guild, Youki asks about the ores, but the attendant explains that they are out of stock. Suddenly, the guild manager appears and says that he would like to ask something of Youki. The boy shows resistance, as he does not want to accept a mission at that moment. However, the manager directly asks if he wants magical ores and twilight primroses. He then explains that the mission consists of exterminating a monster that has settled in a magical ore mine. Furthermore, due to the excessive accumulation of magical energy in the area, the twilight primrose grows naturally there. Upon hearing this, Youki accepts the job without hesitation. As they leave the city, Youki is surprised to discover that it will take a full 2 days to reach the mine. The manager explains that, because he was in a hurry, he managed to arrange express transportation. Upon arriving at the nearby village, they decide that the best option is to enter the mine only the following day. Youki questions whether they could not go on the same day, but the manager explains that this is impossible, as the monster becomes much stronger at night. He clarifies that it is a rock eater that mutated after consuming large quantities of magical ores, becoming extremely aggressive. To make matters worse, the creature possesses high resistance to offensive magic. The manager also emphasizes that they need to bring back the monster's hide intact, as required by the client. The following morning, the group wakes up early and, after getting organized, everyone heads toward the mine. The atmosphere is tense, as they know that the monster inhabiting the place is not a common threat. When they finally encounter it, they quickly realize that the creature never stops devouring the ores, as if it were trapped in an infinite cycle of consumption. Its form is imposing, and the sound of rocks being crushed echoes throughout the interior of the mine. Youki decides to attack first, advancing with determination. However, his strikes have no effect at all, being easily absorbed by the monster's resistance. Trying another approach, he uses a stone barrier to contain the creature, but the monster breaks through the defense with extreme ease, demonstrating strength far greater than expected. Faced with this, Youki asks what they should do next, and, after thinking quickly, makes a risky decision. He decides to wrap Sophia with his shikigami, creating an opening for her to enter directly through the monster's mouth and attempt to defeat it from the inside. After managing to force the creature to open its mouth, Sophia enters without hesitation. However, they soon realize something even more troubling. The rocks inside the monster's body function as a core, allowing other smaller creatures to continuously emerge. The manager then asks everyone to hold out for a little longer, insisting that they restrain the monster as much as possible while he keeps the shikigami active. Suddenly, the smaller creatures stop in front of them, forming a living barrier. Youki tries to attack them, but his blows are easily blocked. Irritated and with no other option, he decides to use brute force, charging forward without fear and striking the creatures as if they were nothing. Forcing his way through, During this advance, the manager ends up becoming exposed, and the monsters begin to attack him directly. Even under pressure, he explains that keeping the Shikigami active is his top priority, as this is essential to the success of the plan. Meanwhile, Youki continues to focus his attacks on the main beast, ignoring the fatigue that begins to build up. After defeating the smaller monsters, Cecilia is already at the limit of her strength and ends up being struck by an unexpected attack. At the moment when she is about to receive another blow, Sophia finally manages to act from inside the monster, attacking it decisively and defeating the creature with ease. The danger, at last, comes to an end. Without wasting time, they run through the mine until they manage to locate it. Upon finding it, everyone stops to admire it, impressed by its beauty and by the energy it emits. Youki suggests that they leave during the night, worried about time and about the people who need help. However, the others try to convince him that traveling at that hour would be too dangerous, especially after the strain of the battle. Even so, during the night, Youki wakes up silently, determined to go alone to deliver the medicine to the people he considers important. He tries to leave without drawing attention, but when he least expects it, he realizes that Cecilia is already awake and waiting for him. She hands him the flowers, as she knew that Youki would try to leave without telling anyone. With an understanding look, Cecilia asks him to move forward and manage to help those he loves. Youki manages to arrive home quickly. Upon entering, he realizes that the gargoyle can no longer speak. This moment hits him deeply, and he begins to blame himself, believing that perhaps he arrived too late. After some time of tension, the gargoyle awakens. Youki then explains that Seek is already taking care of Till and that he came there to cure him. However, the man refuses, stating that there is no longer any cure for him. Even so, Youki forces the ores into his mouth and asks him to eat them as quickly as possible, saying that if he dies, Till will be extremely sad. After swallowing the ore, the man feels his body heat up intensely, as if a new energy were spreading inside him. Soon after, he takes flight, determined to check on how the girl is doing. Upon arriving at Till's house, he realizes that everything is fine and that the girl's condition is stable. Despite the relief, Youki becomes sad when he remembers that he will need to return to the city later that same day. The gargoyle thanks Seek for having taken care of Till, stating that everything was only possible thanks to him. Moved, Seek becomes deeply emotional, happy for having managed to save someone's life. The scene then shifts to Youki returning together with the group. Exhausted from having pushed himself throughout the entire night and not having been able to sleep, he ends up falling asleep during the journey, with his head resting on Cecilia's lap. Thus, in a calm and silent way, another episode comes to an end. The scene shifts to Youki, who walks excitedly through the busy streets of the city while celebrating the fact that he has finally been unbanned from Cecilia's house. He watches people passing by, feels the light breeze against his face, and takes a deep breath, relieved, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. For him, it meant more than simply being able to visit her house again. It was like reclaiming part of his own dignity and proving to himself that he still had some importance. Shortly afterward, while walking absent-mindedly, he runs into Clamon pacing back and forth, visibly indecisive. As he approaches, he discovers that his friend is looking for a present for his wife, since he did not give her anything at the time of their wedding. Clamon seems slightly embarrassed as he admits this, saying he wants to make up for the mistake, even if belatedly. Youki, seeing his friend's sincerity, decides to help him. After all, despite the constant teasing, the two have been companions for a long time. They enter a shop filled with accessories, clothes, and curious little ornaments. The place is colorful and packed with extravagant items. Without thinking much, Youki suggests cat ears, remembering that Clamon's wife likes to dress as a maid. Clamon immediately asks him to stop imagining that kind of thing about his wife, becoming embarrassed and irritated at the same time. Youki simply laughs, pretending innocence, while continuing to browse the shelves. Among so many options, he finds a particularly eye-catching costume, with sparkling details and an exaggerated design. His eyes light up. Impulsive as always, he decides to try on the outfit right there. When he sees himself in the mirror, he strikes a few dramatic poses and, to his own surprise, likes the results so much that he decides to buy it without hesitation, feeling confident and stylish. Later, already at the guild, the receptionist finds it strange to see Clamon there on his day off. He explains that he is just taking care of something quickly and asks her to hand the most troublesome missions to an old friend. Youki, still excited about his new outfit, accepts all the tasks without even reading the details. He feels invincible, like a true superhero ready to save the day, believing that nothing could possibly go wrong. The scene cuts to the forest. Among tall trees and dense shadows, Youki faces a fierce monster. However, the battle ends quickly. He defeats the creature with extreme ease, as if dealing with something trivial, almost boring. When he returns and delivers proof of the mission, the client thanks him repeatedly, moved with emotion. At the guild, the members are impressed to learn that Youki defeated a dragon alone, further increasing his reputation. Next, he sets out on the mission to capture a thief who has been causing trouble. It is already night when he arrives at the location. The criminal, agile and clever, manages to knock out 2 guards using nothing but a heavy book. Along with his group, he pressures the worker who was in the establishment, demanding information. The atmosphere is tense until suddenly Youki appears in a theatrical manner, announcing his presence with exaggerated energy. When he introduces himself, the bandits do not take him seriously, thinking he is just a costumed lunatic. Irritated by their attitude, the leader orders his henchmen to attack immediately. Youki dodges the blows with ease, almost playing with his opponents. He launches a lightning bolt that was supposed to hit the leader, but he misses the main target and ends up striking a girl in the group, who faints on the spot. The other accomplice charges furiously, but is also defeated quickly. Only the leader remains, who tries to use magic to turn the tide, yet ends up defeated and falls unconscious to the ground. After resolving the situation, Youki asks the worker if he is all right. The man, still trembling, thanks him repeatedly, saying he was saved precisely on Valentine's Day, an important date for his business, since he needs to deliver several boxes of chocolate. Youki is surprised to discover that this celebration also exists in that world, something he did not expect. Soon, guards arrive who recognize Youki and comment on his feats. Sensing that the situation might become embarrassing, he leaves quickly before they begin praising him too much. Duke, who already knew where he was, asks him to stop acting in such a showy manner, since he always ends up dying of embarrassment afterward. When he looks at himself in the mirror later, Youki finally realizes how over the top he was dressed and wonders, for the umpteenth time, why he insists on acting that way. The next day, Clamon explains that the thieves were former adventurers who went mad after finding a cursed book. Since then, they have been stealing cocoa and chocolate, saying they would ruin Valentine's Day as a form of protest. Meanwhile, several girls in the city devote themselves to carefully preparing sweets. Youki tells everyone that he does not care about the date, trying to appear indifferent. However, he cannot hide his annoyance when he sees Clamon receive a shiny box of chocolates from his wife. His friend declares that he will not share with anyone. Irritated, Youki tells him to go explode and storms off grumbling. To make matters worse, Duke also receives chocolates, as does Raven, further increasing Youki's frustration. Walking through the city, he watches smiling couples and people buying chocolate. With every romantic scene, his irritation grows. Suddenly, he runs into Mikana, who decided to buy ready-made sweets because she does not know how to cook. At that moment, the hero appears unexpectedly and grabs her chocolate. Even though Youki thinks the action is rude, he tastes a piece and is surprised by the delicious flavor. When he least expects it, several girls appear to give chocolates to Youki. He becomes completely confused but accepts them all, trying to maintain his composure. When he goes to Cecilia's house, he discovers that she has gone out. Her mother, kindly, offers him chocolate. Youki insists that he only wants to receive them from Cecilia, but after some hesitation, he ends up accepting them anyway. Suddenly, Duke appears with alarming news. Envy has escaped from prison. The scene shifts to a group mounted on a giant golem, proclaiming themselves the voice of those deprived of the joy of Valentine's Day and swearing to put an end to the celebration. Youki appears before them and asks them to follow him, climbing onto a rooftop to draw attention. He declares that he understands their pain. He states that if he were in a worse situation, he might be standing alongside them. However, he considers it absurd to destroy everything just because they did not receive chocolates. The leader mocks him, saying that Youki did not receive any either. Embarrassed, he admits that he received some from a friend's mother and is called pathetic. Even so, he insists that he does not feel that way. The battle begins, with spells being exchanged across the city sky. The leader insists that Valentine's Day is useless and only causes suffering. Youki replies that he still has hope of receiving chocolate from the girl he liked. The other becomes embarrassed, as he too would like to receive something from the person he loved. He questions whether it does not bother him to receive sweets from someone who does not truly care. Youki answers that it does not matter who gives them, if it is made with sincere love. It will make someone happy. Consumed by irritation, the villain steals all the chocolates in the city. When he realizes that Cecilia's sweet was also taken, Youki explodes with anger. With a powerful lightning strike, he burns the cursed book that sustained the golem's power, causing the creature to melt and collapse. Before the leader falls, the hero saves her, revealing that the leader is a girl. She confesses that she hates Valentine's Day because she was once rejected for appearing too masculine. The hero tries to comfort her, saying that appearance does not define one's worth, but she does not want to listen at that moment. Youki, in turn, feels a twinge of envy when he realizes that she seems to be in love with the hero, which increases his irritation toward boys considered handsome. Suddenly, Cecilia appears and, with a slight smile, hands a sweet to Youki. He beams, feeling his heart race. Later, when he reunites with his friend, he casually asks whether they also received something special. Then he discovers that, in addition to the chocolates, he received a cake accompanied by a letter. Everyone is impressed. He was the only one who received an entire cake. Envy spreads through the group. Youki, finally satisfied and proud, smiles with confidence. The episode ends with him celebrating, convinced that, in the end, Valentine's Day was not so bad after all. I hope you enjoyed another video. If you did, do not forget to subscribe to the channel to follow more content like this. I am counting on you next week. See you later. The scene shifts to Youki, who arrives at the guild with firm steps and a determined expression. He walks straight to the counter, showing that he has already chosen his next objective. He wants to accept a new mission involving merchant. It is soon explained that, recently, in the port city of Frimaire, several cargo shipments from commercial ships have been mysteriously stolen. The task is to investigate what is happening and, if possible, capture the person responsible and recover everything that was taken before the losses become even greater. Upon realizing that Frimaire is precisely the famous coastal city known for its beaches and the heavy flow of travelers, Youki becomes immediately excited. The simple idea of going there makes his imagination race. He begins to think that this might be the perfect opportunity to spend some special time with Cecilia, away from routine obligations. Thrilled by that possibility, he accepts the mission without thinking twice, barely listening to the rest of the instruction. However, shortly afterward, he discovers that he will not be traveling with Cecilia, but rather with a friend of hers. The explanation is simple and direct. Cecilia is overloaded with work and cannot leave at the moment. When he hears that, Youki is visibly disappointed. His shoulders drop slightly, and his initial enthusiasm fades. Even so, he tries to maintain his composure. Suddenly, the boy who is in love with happiness appears. As soon as he sees her, so beautiful and elegant, he becomes completely flustered. His face turns red, and the words seem to slip away. Happiness also shows embarrassment at the unexpected situation and quickly gets into the carriage to avoid prolonging the awkward moment. Noticing the strange atmosphere and the silent tension between the two, Youki intervenes in a practical manner and asks the young man to calm down so that everyone can have a peaceful journey. When they finally enter the carriage, silence takes over the environment. The atmosphere is heavy, and no one seems to know what to say to break the tension. When they arrive at their destination, he decides to step away discreetly, giving the two of them space. He believes that, in that way, they will be able to talk more freely and perhaps strengthen their closeness a little more. The scene begins at the port of Frimaire, where adventurers gather in search of answers about the mysterious cargo theft. One of the port officials explains that, even with guards on duty during the night, the goods simply disappeared before anyone noticed any suspicious movement. The strangest part was that no one remembered anything. The initial suspicion fell upon the sailors themselves, but they firmly denied it. They said that men of the sea do not steal from their own ships, and that they had no reason to hide anything. The situation becomes even more unsettling when several crew members report having heard a beautiful voice singing shortly before losing consciousness. The hypothesis arises almost immediately. It could be the work of a mermaid. Fear begins to spread throughout the port, and old stories about sunken ships and dead sailors return to the population's memory. Panic grows, and the residents urgently ask the adventurers for help. At that moment, Raven, commander of the Knights of the Kingdom of Clarines, appears and takes responsibility for the situation. With a firm posture, he declares that he will defeat the so-called mermaid, stating that it is a knight's duty to protect the people, regardless of the danger. Meanwhile, Youki and his group analyze the situation more cautiously. To them, something does not make sense. If the sailors were truly the culprits, they would probably invent a more convincing excuse. During the investigation, new information emerges. Some sailors were seen hiding cargo in a cove away from the city. Coincidentally, a mermaid was also spotted in that same region. The coincidence is too great to be ignored. Raven insists that he will face the threat alone, if necessary. He still carries the burden of a village he failed to save in the past when the Demon King's army attacked. For him, defeating the mermaid is not merely a mission, but a matter of honor and personal redemption. Even so, the group decides to accompany him, believing that acting together is more prudent. The scene cuts to the isolated cove. The place is narrow and rocky, too small for large vessels. There, they find wooden crates that match exactly the stolen cargo. The confirmation heightens the tension. Suddenly, something moves in the dark water. Ryumu senses the danger before the others. Then, the song begins. The sound is soft and captivating, invading everyone's mind and bringing an irresistible sensation of sleep. If they lower their guard for even a moment, they will fall unconscious. But Felicidade reacts quickly and uses her own music to drown out the mermaid's singing. The sound pressure turns into an invisible clash, as if two wills were colliding in the air. When they finally face the mermaid, she shows no hostility. Instead of attacking, she begs. She says she does not mind dying, but asks them to save her friend, a child being held hostage by humans. She explains that she was forced to sing and make the crew members fall asleep. If she disobeyed orders, her friend would be killed. Raven does not accept the explanation immediately. To him, demons cannot be trusted. Youki intervenes. He states that he would attack anyone who hurt his friend, human or not. However, he realizes that there is something wrong with that situation. There is still time to hear the truth before acting rashly. The tension gradually decreases. The mermaid introduces herself as Sheik and reveals everything. She and her friend were caught in a violent storm. When she regained consciousness, her companion was already in the hands of humans. The blackmail began there. Since then, she had been obeying orders out of fear. The group decides to believe her, at least enough to investigate further. Raven, still reluctant, agrees to examine the scenario more carefully. As they reassess the clues, they realize that everything seems to have been staged. Information deliberately leaked to attract adventurers, put them to sleep, and eliminate anyone who got too close to the truth. If the theory is correct, the real culprits will appear to eliminate loose ends, and they appear. Several men emerge, pretending to be concerned about Raven and the situation. But the farce does not last long. The tension rises, and the masks finally fall. It becomes clear that they were using the mermaid as a tool to steal cargo and eliminate inconvenient witnesses. Raven faces the criminals coldly and declares that he will not kill them, but that they will pay for what they have done. The fight begins in a direct and intense manner. When they realize they have been exposed, the culprits panic, trying to flee or attack in a disorganized way. In the end, the truth becomes clear before everyone. The true villains were not monsters of the sea, but humans. Even cornered against the damp walls of the deck, the criminals still try to react in a desperate manner, threatening to drag everyone down with them if they were captured. Their eyes were filled with tension, and their voices echoed with empty promises of destruction. Some sailors, overtaken by the adrenaline of the moment, rush forward without thinking twice, believing they were facing a greater threat. However, they soon realized that they had been manipulated by the situation created by the bandits themselves, who used fear and confusion as weapons. It was not the mermaid controlling them, but rather the chaos carefully provoked by those men. With the culprits finally subdued and restrained, silence begins to spread throughout the place, broken only by heavy breathing. Then the main question arises, the one that had truly mattered from the very beginning. Where is Shaik's friend? The answer comes faster than they imagine. After carefully searching the ship, they discover that she had been hidden as if she were just another piece of cargo, locked among the stolen goods, treated as an object rather than as a person. The group immediately rushes to the indicated compartment and finds the girl trapped inside. She is another mermaid, named Misaki. Despite her evident exhaustion, she is conscious. Once freed, she reveals that she possesses the ability to assume a human form, transforming her tail into legs whenever necessary. Although this change considerably limits her powers and leaves her more vulnerable. Even so, the most important thing is that she is alive. The reunion between the two happens in a direct and sincere manner, without exaggeration, yet filled with contained emotion. Shaik admits, her voice slightly trembling, that she feared she would not be able to save her friend and that the worst-case scenario had crossed her mind several times. Misaki, in turn, replies that she never lost hope because she trusted that Shaik would survive and find a way to reach her. The two then turn to the group and thank them for risking everything to save them, acknowledging that without that intervention, the outcome could have been very different. Raven maintains his firm and serious posture, but admits that he judged the situation too quickly when he assumed that the threat came only from the mermaid. He recognizes that appearances do not always reveal the complete truth. As a form of gratitude and also to mark that moment, Misaki decides to sing. This time, her voice does not carry a hypnotic melody capable of controlling minds or influencing emotion. It is merely a simple, soft, and sincere song, filled with gratitude. The lyrics speak about the darkness at the bottom of the sea, about the loneliness of the depths, and about a small light that begins to shine even in the darkest places. It speaks about not giving up, even when everything seems lost and the currents appear impossible to break. The atmosphere changes completely at the sound of that voice. What began with fear, suspicion, and tension ends in relief and understanding.